Good evening. The time is 8 p.m.
Hey, there we go. Stan keeps us on time. It's Tuesday night, November 19th, and it's 8 o'clock at night Eastern Time. Time for DMR Tech Net TV. We're waiting for our special guest, Dave Wolf, call sign WO5H, who was the king of parts at Radio Shack. So we want to talk to him tonight about how he got everything into Radio Shack with amateur radio products. And we will just do seat of the pants navigating till we get there. Uh, I'm Dana, KC0MYP, along with other DMR TechNet members. We've got Brad, KE8WNV. We've got Steve, KC8WXM. We have Santa Claus on our team. Stan, WB8QJZ. And also I see Tom, N8TJ, just joined us too. If you just joined us, we're waiting for our special guest to show up. And in the meantime, what would you guys like to talk about? I can tell you a little bit about Radio Shack or Dave's history. He was the king of parts. He and his product team introduced amateur radio equipment such as the HTX 100, the HTX 202, which they call the best-selling HT of all time. They also introduced the HT242, which is the mobile 2-meter radio, HTX 404, just like the 202, but for UHF bands, plus amateur radio products and parts. If you bought solder, capacitors, resistors, switches, ICs, test equipment, such as a Radio Shack battery tester, I think one of the best ones we sold, because I worked at Radio Shack for 19 years. They had all kinds of cool stuff. Steve just went up to Charlevoix to a dealer franchise store. Wait, I see Tom. What are you holding down there? Tom, you're muted.
I'm holding up an HTX 202, except I can't get it to come into the video. There it is. You got to put it right by your face.
Yep.
Okay, there it is, right?
Okay.
HTX 404. Oops, I just... Oh, what happened here? Oh, I flipped around. Hang on. What happened?
Real quick, when it's at or near its peak, but the real good
We lost Tom. He killed his video.
How do I get it back? How do I get back on camera?
Simple. Just get in front of it.
Oh, there it goes.
There you go.
Up to 32 degrees. That's a little more.
So you got the 404?
I got the 404 right here.
Right before.
Cool. It looks just like the 202. But as I said, the 202 they claim is the best-selling HT ever. So I also see Rick joined us, 88KN, another one of our DMR TechNet team members. We're waiting for our special guest, Dave Wolf, who worked at Radio Shack during the glory days, the golden era, when they started with CBs and went from there. And I was talking earlier before we started recording about the history of Radio Shack. I got some of the history of it in the newsletter. By the way, if you did get the newsletter, great. If you didn't get it, I apologize. I had some computer issues. And as Brad let me know and Steve did and Stan did, all of a sudden we had like 89 kickbacks that got kicked off our email list.
I don't think I got it either. So
I resent it out again this afternoon, Rick. So, and Steve, what time was that? 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock? 4.
Yeah, 16:08, 4 o'clock.
So, but it talks a lot about some of the cool products at Radio Shack. Nice thing about Radio Shack, they were vertically integrated. They designed the products, and then we built it at our factories for a lot of stuff. Then we used Tandy Transportation to ship it to the warehouses and Tandy Transportation to get it to the stores. And then they had at one point 5,000 corporate owned and operated stores. That's one of the ones I worked at. Mine was 014073 in beautiful downtown Denver, Colorado.
change I don't have it either.
Well, I apologize. I can resend it out to you.
I even had a Radio Shack amateur receiver at one time. I bought it in 1972.
Nice.
and I don't know where it is right now. I don't know what I did with it.
Rick,
I have it anyway.
we were talking, you had, it was a dual band.
Yeah,
Remember we talked
HCX
about
420.
What was it?
It's an HCX 420.
Wow, that
Yeah.
one you don't see much.
Yeah, I found it. That's actually what got me back in amateur radio from a long hiatus. I bought it in the Radio Shack at mall at
Yeah.
Meridian Mall.
Meridian.
Hold on. Dave has shown us. Oh, yes, I remember those. Those are 40 series. Is that correct? Yep. See, if we talk product line, if you went parts like solder, 64-1, batteries, 23552 is our best selling AA alkalines. But the different product lines.
I have the stereo L pad on the wall in my shack here because at one point this room was a temporary bedroom for my son and daughter-in-law, and they had a receiver out in the main room of the basement and remote speakers in here. So I put the L pad in here and a plate for the remote speakers so that they could essentially set the balance between the main room and the bedroom here.
Dave, time out. I detect an accent. Is that Canada?
Who, me?
Yes.
No, no, I think so. I think not. It's Michigan.
When you say words with O and U, like
Oh,
out, oot, or something like
I
that.
don't know. I don't know that I've picked it up, but I mean, I lived down south for many years, and I picked up a southern accent for a while, but it's pretty much gone.
Hey, that's a nice B-17 on your shirt there, Dana.
Actually,
And
you guys, I don't
what
think
else
you
you
can
got?
see it. Hold on, just a minute.
You got a B-17, and then you got a something else
No,
on.
hold on. I want to show this. That's my Tandy Corporation 15-year pin. I
Wow.
didn't make it to 20, but also,
What'd
Tom,
you
this is what you have. There's your. And you
Oh,
see it behind me.
I have a
It's-
box too. I have one of the boxes too.
And you know what's weird? They called them either the Radio Shack or Realistic. And then later on, we also had house brands like Optimus. This is Micronta on the battery tester.
So the
Um,
HTs were always realistic, Dana?
No,
Were they?
they were, well, both Realistic, and then they went to the Radio Shack branding.
Wow, I've never seen one with Radio Shack branding.
Well, hold on. If you look close, Realistic, this is my shortwave radio. There we go. And who was it? Somebody mentioned it. Was it Dave? And Tom and I were talking about this. They included the schematic in the back of the diagram or in the owner's manual, which a lot of companies did not do.
If you needed parts, you could just call the Part King. And you
Yeah,
could,
they carried a lot of stuff.
well, my favorite, the radio that got me into ham radio was the Radio Shack DX60B, the receiver.
Talk about it.
My neighbor had one, and I just fell in love with that thing. You could listen to everything from 100 kilohertz to 30 megahertz. I think it was all low band, but back then, you could hear police and fire and stuff to some extent on that. And he was good. He was my Elmer. That's the day he became my Elmer when I saw his DX60B. I love that thing, and I've always wanted one, but I never had one. You see them around at a ham shack once in a while. They must have sold a zillion of them. That's probably one of the more popular items.
I still have my old Radio Shack realistic stereo receiver that I got back when I was in high school, the STA-18B. And it is it's in the wood shop over here, and I use that to listen to stuff while I'm working in the wood shop. So
cool.
But by the way, Dave, your receiver STA and also later STAV, stereo tuner amplifier STA.
Wow.
Yep.
That's how they came up with that stuff. And then TRC, what was it? Tandy Radio Corporation or something like that. I forget what they were.
I think the 18 was how many watts RMS per channel it was.
Cool. What was the best selling item of Radio Shack of all time? Like what thing sold more than anything?
I would tend to say if you're going all time in terms of quantity, batteries, like a 23552 are alkaline ones.
What was
They were
what,
rated number
what,
one.
just regular old batteries? Just regular
Yeah,
DC?
everybody had a battery card, and every time you went to Radio Shack, you got free batteries.
That
Right,
was a you
right.
know
Remember that.
what's the name of the company that's doing that today? Harbor Freight. You
Tesla.
go in, you get something for free.
Harbor Freight's been handing out multimeters.
That's cool. Since we're waiting, let's just go around the horn here. Talk about Radio Shack. What do you remember? What did you buy? Good memories, bad memories. To my right, let's just start. Well, we already know Brad said he doesn't have any. So,
He's too young.
well, actually, Brad has a very good point. Brad, why don't you go ahead and tell us what happened when you went to Radio Shack, the website, and looked for radios?
Oh yeah. So Radio Shack can't be rightly called Radio Shack because they don't even sell a basic radio.
Makes sense.
They have no radios for sale on their website. You can buy Bluetooth speakers, but you cannot buy a radio.
Well, Bluetooth is technically a radio. Uses infrared. High frequencies. Go ahead, Brad. Sorry.
Okay. So while Bluetooth is technically radio, it's not a radio.
Right.
It's a Bluetooth speaker. It's not a radio. It uses radio, but it's not a
Receiver.
radio.
The receiver.
Yes, it uses radio, but it's not a radio.
You want to tell us our smartphones aren't radios either?
I don't know of any radios that don't use radio.
Well, you know what? You know what's funny? You guys have probably seen this. They say, take your cell phone today, your smartphone. And you know how many products we sold that are now part of this? We sold camcorders. We sold cameras. We sold recorders. We sold telephones. We sold the old home phones, cordless phones. And then we were one of the leaders in the original cell phones. It was what was that? The CT1001, I think it was, cellular telephone. That I couldn't believe it. $1,299 for the phone. Oh, you want batteries? You want the battery holder? There's another couple hundred right there. Oh, you need a charger to charge it up. Oh, you want to use it in your car? You got to get an antenna for it. And you got to mount it in your car unless you want to pay somebody $250 to do it. So,
We got our first Sprint phones at Radio Shack when the Sprint came into the Detroit market. We were charter members of yeah.
Oh, that was the Sony with it. It popped up.
Yeah, yeah. I had the little pop-up.
I love that phone. That was great. We sold a pile of those out of my store. Go ahead, Brad.
But it's what I'm saying though. If you search for a radio, the only thing you find is portable Bluetooth speakers. This one, particularly here, is listed as a 2-channel Bluetooth portable speaker with FM. It's not a radio, it's a Bluetooth speaker now.
Well, Steve today went to a Radio Shack. There's only about 300 of the stores left in the U.S. They're not corporate owned and operated. They did 2 bankruptcies. They're out of business. But in Central America, the name Radio Shack lives on. There's a lot of stores there. And Steve went to a dealer franchise store to take a look. It was in Charlevoix. Steve, you want to tell us again what you discovered when you went there?
Yeah, one of the things, like you're talking about batteries, they have lead batteries, the 12-volt lead acid batteries that you use for projects. They have like a little fat. There's one that was almost like a square block and some rectangular ones. Those I found were pretty neat. They also had some CBs and CB antennas and stuff like that. And there was looking at an SWR meter. Hi, Olive. Olive doesn't want me to say anything. I'm done talking.
Good thing you're not playing the bagpipes.
Yep. She hides. Maybe I should get those out.
Yeah. And here's a little history. Radio Shack was founded in 1921 in Boston, focused on amateur radio, ham radio, and electronics. The company initially catered to radio operators, hobbyists, and maritime operators, providing parts, kits, and equipment. The core market during the mid-20th century, amateur radio was a thriving hobby. Radio Shack capitalized on this by offering affordable, accessible equipment including transceivers, antennas, and accessories, which takes us to 1963, 42 years later. There were 9 stores of Radio Shack in the Boston area. They were almost bankrupt. The Charles Tandy of Tandy Corporation, he acquired them. And under his leadership, Radio Shack expanded the product line to include not only amateur radio gear, but also general consumer electronics. And they did pretty darn good. They designed and built their own products, such as the Realistic and later the Radio Shack lines. This included, excuse me, ham radios, CB radios, and shortwave receivers. Shortwave receivers like my DX380, one of the best ones I thought with all the reviews. I've got a couple of them now. Bob, your experience with Radio Shack?
Mine is just like any hobbyist. If you needed a resistor or something like that, Radio Shack is where you went. And I think, I'm trying to remember, but I think I started to build a 20-meter transceiver, which was on 1 tube. I never did get it done, but I'm pretty sure the parts came from Radio Shack. That was a lot of sunrises and sunsets ago.
You know, back then, Amazon wasn't even around. I don't even think it was a Gleam. First thing I bought at Radio Shack, Dave's showing something. He's going to tell us about it here in a minute.
Soldering iron.
Dave, do you remember the P-Box kits? Project Box. It was a plastic box, and it had all the parts inside, and you built something with it.
I had the 101 kit from them when I was like in elementary or middle school. The 101 electronic kit with those little springs and the yep. So, but yeah, so this is actually on my bench over there. I still use it as
and that's when you can dial a temperature in.
Yeah, digital soldering station. Yeah, from Radio Shack. It turns out that it uses tips that I can get from AEA that matches it. So I don't have a problem with getting replacement tips either. The Hacko tips.
Those are cool. We sold a lot of soldering irons. We had to make, you wouldn't believe it, all the space we had to put for the parts and pieces. And then later they were idiots. Let's put them in drawers where you can't see them and they're all mixed up.
Oh yeah, the last I saw was the one that we had here in town. They had put all the parts in those rotating drawers and the carousels. So you had to dig the parts out of those drawers, yeah.
Oh well. Stan, your experience with Radio Shack.
Well, like everyone else, Radio Shack was a place you went for parts if you wanted to build something. We had one store that was an independently owned radio TV supplier, and he had some things, but not a whole heck of a lot. So you went to Radio Shack with your parts. I had an HTX 100, the 10-meter transceiver, HTX 202, and the 202 came about because I had a packet radio station set up, and I had this very expensive ICOM all-mode transceiver that was sitting there tied up on this packet station. And I said, why do I want to do that? Why tie up that much money? So I bought a 202, put that in, found out I didn't need all the power that I had on the other station. And one night I got a call from a guy and asked if I was a ham, and asked me if I was on packet radio. And when I asked if my station was on, I said, yeah. Well, it turned out the guy was in Dallas, Texas, and we had a contact between us, lasted about 45 minutes on some point to point, and I had that 202 into a little Chris-Craft Ringo, not even a Ranger. So fantastic little radio.
That was on 2 meters, right?
That was on 2 meters, right?
Wow, that was tropospheric propagation of some capacity.
It sure was.
It must have been because of Keweenaw. I wonder if it had something to do with the high latitude.
Yeah, I don't know. And it was we were at the farm. It was, high, it was kind of open ground, but I don't know how or what, but
wow.
I think that was on 145.09.
Did there happen to be a temperature inversion that day?
Yeah.
Temperature
Cool.
inversion will do it.
That's cool. By the way, I don't know about you guys. This is still in my library. A general class training book with the questions written by Gordon West, who now
Yeah.
writes for the ARRL. This was published in '88, way back when. So let's see here. Rick, we're talking Radio Shack. Your memories or products or whatever.
Like everybody, parts, screws, bolts, resistors, looking at test equipment, looking at different stuff. The one vivid memory I have is where I lived in Pennsylvania, we didn't have any really close by. And I went down to New Kensington, which was, I don't know, 20, 30 miles away. And there was a Radio Shack there. And I forget, I was looking for a radio, I think. I was going away to, or no, I was getting married. And we just went into Radio Shack on a lark. And I found an Allied 395 stereo receiver. That's just after they bought Allied.
Allied Radio Shack.
And I had to borrow money from my mother to buy that receiver. And that's when I bought the shortwave receiver for $35, I think, and a pair of Realistic Minimus 2 speakers.
Ooh.
So I had those for quite a while. That radio went with me to Europe. I listened to AFN radio on it, like Armed Forces Network radio, because that's all we had in Frankfurt, because all the outlying areas got TV and we didn't. And so they replayed all the old radio serials. Oh shoot, on a Mystery Theater and Paladin or Have Gun Will Travel and stuff like that. We listened, the wife and I listened to that till we got the Bose speakers and got better stuff.
I promise you weren't missing anything special with the AFN TV commercials.
No, I wasn't, but you didn't have any TV either. So that radio followed me, back home back to the States, and we used it for quite a while. And then we gotten bigger and better things.
Hey, Brad, you made me think of something. You guys go ahead and talk. I'll be right back. I got to show you something.
Got to be AFN TV, probably. When we were in Europe, Wiesbaden was the closest. I think they were like 40 miles away or more. And that was the closest TV station.
Mm.
And I found or wrangled away from somebody that was selling it a fairly large TV antenna that I could put in the roof of our four-story building. And I put RF amplifiers the whole way down, connected them together, and we all had TV in our stairwell for a while. It wasn't too bad, but till we got a local station that worked very well.
By the way,
Nice.
Brad, we talked. The name was Radio Shack. And if you guys look behind me over, let's see here, this shoulder, let me slide this way. That I think was one of the best AM/FM cable radios we sold, MTA 12. Above my, let's see here. Nope, wrong side. There. That's our 12-volt power supply that was 10 amp. You can kind of see it. Behind me, go above my finger, there's that DX380 AM/FM shortwave longwave radio. But, Brad, this is for you. Radio Shack was known as, they sold radios. This is an AM radio that we sold a long time ago. And I just discovered something. And this is, who went to go get their free batteries? Because there's a red 9-volt one that we used to give out every month. I don't know if it still works or not. I haven't turned this thing on in a while. But I've had this for a few years. Somebody gave it to me when I worked at Radio Shack. Is before my time with them. But man, this is
I'm
cool.
surprised that battery hasn't exploded with how old it is.
Well,
It's
you know
got to
what?
be at least 50 years old with how old Radio Shack is.
Could be. Could be. I think this came out in the 60s. But you
Yeah.
know what? We had higher standards and tolerances for the products. We didn't always build them, but we had someone else build them. We want them built to higher standards, especially the batteries, so they wouldn't leak. Where we always complain, you bought a Duracell, over time it would leak, where the Radio Shack ones did not. At least when I was there. After that, they changed manufacturers a few times. So who had Radio Shack battery cards?
I
didn't.
I'm sure I had one.
I gave my brother, we ordered those in blocks of 500. And I gave one to my brother, and he says, I want a block. So I'm going to walk in the Radio Shack and drop it on the car and say, where's your batteries? But you only got one battery a month, supposedly. If somebody wanted other ones, I didn't care. It's free advertising for us. And it was, you can't sell them unless they're in your store. I thought that was a great promotion. Alan, you're quiet. You're muted. Your Radio Shack history, your memories.
Well, see, I think we talked about it the other night. I went there an awful lot for components. I took a year course at Lansing Community College, a computer repair technician, and got my certificate back in '90. And I was there at Radio Shack awful lot buying, different logic, chips, playing around in the labs there at Lansing Community College. Let's see, I have a realistic DX100 shortwave radio that I bought there at Radio Shack, and I used it a lot. I took it with me when I was out doing some my well site geology work, and I'd sit in a hotel room and didn't want to watch TV, so I would tune in all the different bands and see what was going on. And I've got an HTX 400, the small VHF HT. It's a neat little radio. It still works fine. And then we were talking about the Radio Shack, the SWR watt meter. I have one of those, and then I've got the Radio Shack dual heat soldering station. I bought a long time ago, and I got a Radio Shack breadboard. I used when I was testing the logic circuits. So yeah, I hit Radio Shack a lot until they shut down, and then I ended up going to Fulton Electronics here in town to get my components until they started selling all this stuff on Amazon. And then I shifted over to Amazon. But yeah, Radio Shack was a good source for me back through the years, for sure.
They did many things. They bought Computer City, tried running that, found out selling computers is not, you lose more money than you make.
Actually, with that Tandy computer, we had got one of those when I worked for the Geological Survey, and we were trying to get it to do some wireline log analysis with us. We were programming it with BASIC and trying to get it to do some graphical type work for us, and it was a nice computer.
The Tandy 1000s, 1200s, 3000s, 4000s, 5000s, color computers. Hold on, Bob. Tom, show us the book you had that got your interest in amateur radio.
Let me see if I can share it. 1 second. It didn't come through on my.
I saw it.
I know, but that was hard to see. I want to make it. How
Just
do I
click
do
the share button? Put the screen on. You want to share it off?
photos?
But you have to show it on your screen.
Yeah, I know. I'm gonna share content, right?
Mhm.
Photo. It didn't come through. I'll show it. I'll just show it to you. This is the book. This is the book that I went out and got after I used that DX60B because I couldn't afford to buy that, so I bought this.
Oh, we can't see it, Tom.
You see,
Hold it up in front of your face.
He was.
It won't show unless you're
There you go. Shut your video background off. Shut your background off.
Hey, I even had a Trash 80 Model 1 computer with an expansion interface and
How cool is that right there?
coupler. Yep, there it goes.
I'll show you though. It's very cool. I mean, this thing has everything in it. Oh, hey, look, there's a picture of the
Yep.
DX60B.
Very nice.
Oh, I found a DX60B on eBay for like 150 bucks.
Yeah, that's about right. There's a lot of them, but actually the truth is I had this book and I dog-eared it. I mean, I sat and laid in my bunk bed in my room at home when I was 16 and I just wore this book out. And then I lost track of it over the years. So a few years ago, I found one on eBay. And the guy, I said, I got to have that. And the guy said, a guy wrote a note in it. He said, Tom, I've been a ham radio operator since the 70s. This is one of the best radio electronics books published, in my opinion. I have my own copy. Enjoy. Nick, KF7VWS. That pretty much settles it right there.
Very nice.
Best electronics book published because I had a CB, and the way I met the guy with the DX60B was that I was on my CB talking to my brother, and this guy had a real CB in his ham shack, and he started talking to us, and I said, dang, where are you? He was just up the street. Walked down there and became friends for life with the guy. He's a silent key now. And the emergency coordination over in Kalamazoo there's a repeater named after NK8X. That's the dude. Art Snapper, and he was a major Radio Shack participant. We had one in Kalamazoo, Michigan. That was in Portage, but you had to go into Kalamazoo to the Radio Shack. So that is the foundation of my ham radio. Stan learned at MTU, or actually he probably taught what he learned from ham radio at MTU, but I didn't have any formal training other than Radio Shack book, quite honestly. And that launched my career after college. Basically, my knowledge of RF and transmitters got me a job. Forget college. That does nothing for you. Practical ham radio experience, building projects with Radio Shack. That's what'll get you a job. That's the truth. Sorry.
No, that's cool. Hey, Bob, before I go to you, any of you guys ever buy this book at Radio Shack?
Yeah, I
Getting
did.
started.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
I'm gonna go with
a
no on that.
Who does that now? You know?
I bought that for my our physics class had an electronics section that we had to go through, so we had to get that book for that.
By the way, the price in this book was $2.49. I couldn't find it. It was packed in my stuff. So I went online to Radio Shack and bought it. $19 for the PDF version.
Oof.
So the PDF version?
And it says written exclusively for Radio Shack by Forrest Mims. Bob, you were raising your hand earlier.
Oh, Alan touched a memory when the computer started to first come out and be available to everybody. I bought 2 shares of Tandy stock so I could get a discount on the first computer I bought. And I worked at the electric utility in Lansing, the Board of Water and Light. Their entire 7th floor was devoted to a computer with a megabyte of capacity. And when I buy this computer, it was the Model 1 Level 2. The Model 1 was 16K. The Level 2 was 32K of memory. And I thought the Board of Water and Light has a megabyte on the entire 7th floor. I'll never need that much. So I bought Model 1, 2 at a slight discount, and I was afraid to take it home, so I took it to work. And I had it at work for 2 years.
Wait. You didn't want to take it home? Your wife was not going to be happy?
Oh, she would have been very unhappy. So I wanted to be able to take it home and say, see what it's doing for me, not I think it'll do this. And I was able to do that. So 2 years later, I did take it home. But while I had it at work, I was the only one that had a personal computer in his office. And I was starting to write on BASIC, like Alan mentioned, a program on estimating for what I had to do for having designing utility line stuff. And I never did get it done. And I had about 6,000 or 7,000 lines of code. I never did get it finished, but it was an amazing little unit. And downstairs right now, I do have a Model 1000 with a color monitor, and I've got a brand new joystick I bought that I never really even took out of the box. Meantime, I had started advancing into computers because you didn't have to write it anymore. They were writing it for you. All you had to do was use it. Back to net control.
Good stuff there.
Hey, Dana, what was that book you just showed?
It's called Getting Started in Electronics by Forrest Mims. And I got it on the Radio Shack website, a PDF version, until I found this one for $2.49. I paid for, God, I don't know, probably in the mid 80s I got this.
I just found it for free to read on archive.org.
Very cool. Brad, if you can download it, take a look. I'll bet Dave knows about that book.
You can't, I don't think you can download from archive.org because of the way it works. I think you can only view it in their system.
I found a guy on the Radio Shack Memories Facebook group who sent me all of the project notebooks, like the 555 timer, op amp circuits. I've got all those now in PDF. So
nice.
Dave, I was going back to you.
Yeah, well, I remember when I was in high school, it was in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And my folks were actually pretty good about keeping me, set up with stuff. I know one year under the Christmas tree there was a microscope, and then there was a chemistry set, and then there was this electronics 101 kit from Radio Shack, and I really jumped into that thing. The thing was is that we didn't have a Radio Shack store in Murfreesboro. The nearest one was in Nashville, which was 30 miles away. And of course, I didn't have a car to drive up there or anything at the time. So I had to hitch a ride with my folks when they'd go to the Hundred Oaks Mall. And then I would essentially make a beeline for the Radio Shack store. And I mean, I ended up, getting many different things from there. Oh, one of the things that I've got over here in the cabinet is their little pack of transistors that they had.
Mm-hmm.
They had CK722s and whatever else was in that little package. So you got a handful of NPNs and PNP germaniums and an NPN and PNP silicon transistors. And they all came in this little plastic case. And I still have the case over here with a card in it and everything for those transistors. And I actually use them to try to build some, homebrew projects with. But I think the one thing besides the 101 kit was that one year I got a Radio Shack shortwave receiver, a portable shortwave receiver. It had AM and FM and a couple of shortwave bands on it. And I listened to Radio South Africa and all of those places, and just that really got me hooked. There was a radio club at the high school. They put a note out over the speaker system saying that if anybody wanted to get their ham radio license, they should show up at this, at the electric shop after school. And so then the next thing I got was I got one of those Radio Shack keys that was on a Bakelite black plastic base, a Morse code key that they were selling, and used that with an oscillator that I built in the 101 kit so I could send Morse code to myself and practice code. So that's how much Radio Shack was inimical to all of my early, goings on with this stuff. And yes, and I did go to college at Tennessee Tech University. I got a degree in electrical engineering, and I ended up essentially working for several startup companies doing microprocessor development and work. And then for the last 20 years of my career, I ended up getting mixed up with the auto industry. But actually working there in the vehicle access group as a cybersecurity and RF specialist for our remote keyless entry systems, passive entry systems, and the tire pressure monitoring. So and I just retired from Stellantis at the end of 2023.
Wow.
So I can say having that hands-on work, even in spite of the fact that I had an electrical engineering degree, but all that hands-on work really made a big difference in the kinds of things that I was able to get into and work on. So and Radio Shack is what kicked it all off.
Isn't that something? I always wanted Radio Shack to have more radios. Just basically said his whole career started from tinkering with electronics or whatever, and I always wanted him to have more radios. The 2 meter and the 10 meter, you know, and they were into the rebranding. And I was thinking Dave Wolf would talk about that a little bit tonight. You know, Radio Shack rebranded stuff, and now that's all there is, other than the Japanese companies. Anytone is a rebrand of a purchased Chinese chassis and distributed by companies. And I wonder what the difference, it's just the way of the world, I guess. You know, he was buying all his parts. You know, he's the parts guy. Those parts are made in Japan, right, Dana?
They were
Like-
Japan and China, and we actually sourced them through A&A International. That was our Japanese partner.
That was a Japanese company, A&A International.
Mm-hmm.
Huh?
Yeah, my R Finder is a rebranded Runbow.
Really?
Yeah,
That's
they're
just-
they're Runbow commercial radios, but they're rebranded as R Finder and modified to operate in the ham radio bands.
Huh.
Hmm.
I'm sure like a GD77 is a commercial radio in some country, you know, rebranded something else. That same durable little cheap radio probably is, you know, it's just different the way it's done these days. And I don't know, it's can't change it. You know, maybe Radio Shack should have been just a battery company. There's battery franchises all over, you know, and that's all they sell is batteries. And Dana, as you said, that was their biggest thing, selling batteries. But who would have known? You know, everything uses batteries now. Not nearly as many things used batteries back then. Electronics overall is different, but
Brad, your comment?
Me?
Yeah, I don't know if you had a comment or not.
Nothing meaningful. I have all kinds of comments, just none meaningful right now.
So talking about Radio Shack, essentially private labeling and relabeling a bunch of stuff. That's what MFJ did for many, many years. And,
oh, they did.
and so yeah, and they would also bring stuff in house and make them in house, but they would buy designs from out of house. You know, and of course that company just recently went out of business because the owner is retiring.
Yeah, he did it for 30 years though, or whatever, 40 years.
Yeah.
Or MFJ.
Yeah.
But MFJ, everybody called Mighty Fine Junk.
Yeah.
I have a whole
There was
bunch
some
of that
stuff
stuff.
that was good and some stuff mediocre.
Yeah, I still have MFJ stuff that works, and I've had it for 30 years. So, I mean, how much?
I have a 939 auto tuner.
Yeah.
The IntelliTuner works
And
great.
it still works. It still works.
Well,
Yeah.
it should. It's fairly new. I just bought it last year, or when I got my Icom 7300.
Isn't it interesting how everybody's excited about talking about Radio Shack? Hams do. It's like, like talking about your childhood.
Well, it was my childhood.
I have a soldering iron, a gun type from Radio Shack. It was a 100-watt soldering iron.
Did you see Dave showed us his? He's got one too with a variable.
That looks nice. That looks really nice.
That digital soldering station. And prior to that, I had some import thing or other that was a temperature controlled soldering station, and it just blew up on me one afternoon. And the only place that I could get, and I was in the middle of assembling a kit, so the only place I could get a replacement was to go around the corner to the Radio Shack that we still had here in town, and I bought that digital soldering station there.
Wow.
That's probably back about 2007 or 2008.
When did you move to Ann Arbor, Dave?
In 82.
Oh, so you were there. There was a ham radio store in Ann Arbor.
Oh yeah.
What was it?
Fulton Electronics.
What was it?
Fulton Electronics. It was
Fulton?
down.
Does that sound right? Does that sound right, Dave? It was excellent though. See, it was way better than Radio Shack, but it didn't have as much stuff. Radio Shack had everything, you know, a little bit of
Purchase radio.
Purchase radio.
Okay.
Yeah, Purchase radio, and they were like, almost right off the campus there, right downtown.
Yeah.
And Roy Purchase
I love that place.
Our radio club actually now has his call sign in memoriam. We have our club calls W8RP.
Is that right?
Yeah.
You're right. That was never mind. Fulton is in Lansing. Purchase
Pennsylvania.
Been there many times.
They helped me with my HW8. Where would you take an HW8 Heathkit today?
Yeah, we were in competition with Heathkit. Did you guys ever have this? The helping hands?
I got
Oh,
one now.
yeah.
I got one now.
Downstairs.
Oh, yeah.
I bought one from Harbor Freight.
That's probably where I got mine.
And by the way, Dave, I know where Murfreesboro is. My sister-in-law used to live there, and I have a brother lives now in Smyrna. So
Yeah.
good stuff
Oh,
there.
Absolutely.
here's
You
a-
know what a pain it was as a novice to send Murfreesboro, Tennessee as your QTH at 5 words per minute.
Oh God. Here's one.
Imagine
I've got a
Child
whole
Boy.
box of stuff, but this is one of my early name badges. Radio Dana as a manager. Here's one because I was one of their top rated ones. I don't have the one I sent that to the museum, but this is my Leaders Club, which is leader in profits and sales.
Wow.
And here's my one of my.
So you were in it for the money.
I got paid pretty good, but I tell you one thing: as I talked to somebody, they had you work 60 hours a week minimum as a manager, 6 10-hour days a week.
They made you do it. They made you do it.
Yeah, that no if and or buts. If you weren't there, you got written up. And but here I gotta show you this. I don't know if you guys can see it. This is my Radio Shack President's Council cross pen. This is the best of the best. I won it 3 years in a row. It's the top 100 managers out of 5,000. And we got to go to.
And all you got out of it was a cross pen.
Hey, well, also we got access to the big guys. It's a ink pen, but it's one of my favorite. I still have them. I got a couple more still in boxes I haven't used. So
It's like I worked 60 hours a week for Radio Shack, and all I got was a lousy pen.
At least it wasn't much.
yeah, actually, Dave, I worked more like about 74 hours a week because my store was only open 6 days a week, but I ran the store downtown Denver. 2 stories. You didn't see that very often.
Yeah,
and store was only 17 feet wide, 55 feet deep with a second level. And we were open the fewest hours of any store, but we were the busiest store in the state, the most profitable store. We wrote the most sales tickets. We wrote more sales tickets in 1 hour being a downtown location. Between noon and 1, we'd write like 32 tickets during that hour. Most stores would write about 28 all day long. They're open 10 to 9 or something like that. We were open less hours. We wrote more tickets in an hour. But
no wonder
I won a lot of contests. My employees were some of the best paid in the district and the company. So
everybody
it was fun.
Store.
But,
were you always the manager at that store?
Yeah.
When they opened it? I mean,
no. I first thought the store was a joke, and then my boss wanted to put me there. And finally, I got sick and tired of him berating me. I said, finally, tell you what, if the store is closed on Sundays, I'll take it. He goes, let me think about that. All right, done. I didn't know it. He'd shut the store on Sundays like a month before then. I didn't know it. So he wanted me down there. So I was there for 13 years, had fun. Then I just got sick and tired of working over 60 hours a week. Yeah, I did that for 19 years, and it kind of wears on you. Stan, you had a story about the Radio Shack in your neck of the woods that was closing, and you were freaking out because your parts supplier was disappearing.
Right.
You want to share that?
Yeah. Well, we had, it was a small locally owned store. Couple owned it. He was a high school teacher. They were running the store and whatnot, and they had parts and they had just about everything. It was great. They finally got to the point where they said, okay, this is just getting to be too much. We want to sell the business, or we're gonna go close the business. Well, they started closing the business and they started discounting their merchandise. So I'd go over there at lunchtime and I'd peruse the books and come up with I'd fill a grocery bag, bring it up, check out. And I do that a couple times a week. And I kept running into my friend in there, Rick Anderson, WAJSF. He was an engineer for the local power company. And we were in there together, and he said, Stan, one of us has got to buy this store so we have our parts. I said, good. You buy the store, I'll buy it in bags. Well, a month later, he bought the store. He moved it from Hancock to Houghton, and they expanded it, and they started what was called computer mechanics out of that, what actually spun off as a separate business later. but it was then resold to Frank Murphy, who had been in the Air Force over in England. So he called it Piccadilly Circuits.
Circuits.
Yep, and it remained downtown Houghton, and then it moved up to one of the strip malls, and that's where it was up until I think it officially closed. But they were, they had everything. I bought an awful lot of stuff from those folks.
So what did everybody do then when Radio Shack wasn't around? I don't remember what was happening. There was it was before the internet, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, this was not that. No, I mean the Tandy computers were out there, and I had all that stuff, and had handled that stuff too. But I think we got to the era of people weren't building anymore.
Yeah.
You could buy an appliance for less than you could buy the parts to build the appliance.
Now,
So
that's what happened to Heathkit, really.
Our local Radio Shack store in Ann Arbor turned into a cellular store.
Mhm.
I mean, they still had some Radio Shack stuff in the back.
Yeah. Yep.
But they were mainly just there to sell cell phones.
Right. Yeah.
I remember that pretty distinctly.
Cell phones killed it. They killed ham radio stuff. That's terrible.
That's part of it, I guess.
but Radio Shack had good cell phones too. I had one of those.
But people say that when Heathkit went out of business, nobody was making kits anymore. But really, frankly, right now we're awash in kits, and particularly if you're a QRP fan, there is no end to the kits that you can put together.
Yeah, it has increased. Elecraft and all that, they brought it back. Yeah, you're right. There was always been kits though, because they're simple. They're simple.
Ramsey Electronics was selling lots of interesting kits. But now, QRP Labs, sells some really interesting kits that you put together. And I've got some over on the bench here that I've been working on.
Yeah.
You can even, they've even brought back the old NorCal 40, that's called the NorCal 40B. But NM0S now makes a kit for the NorCal 40 if you want to really get back into that.
Those are good radios too.
Yeah.
Good radios. Yeah, I built this from Heathkit.
Ooh,
oh, yeah.
nice.
Yeah,
That's
there you
beautiful.
go.
I built that right after I finished from 5 watts to
Was
1,000
that the transceiver with panels on it?
No, it's Keyer. It's a giant Keyer.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, it's
It weighs
just a
like
Keyer.
four-
It's not a built-in. It's not a radio with a keyer on it.
That's all it is a Keyer.
Oh,
Yeah.
just a keyer. Oh,
Right.
okay.
A friend of mine in high school had built one of those things, and then he got the paddles from Vibroplex
Oh,
to use to drive that with.
that's the weak point of it, the mechanics of it. It's
Yeah.
not real tight. It could use a little.
I built a predecessor. I built a predecessor to that.
There
Keyer.
was one that was, it was
big
brown,
one.
right?
No, it was still green and.
No, it was.
It had a sloping panel with a built-in
Yeah,
speaker
sloping
on the
panel,
top.
big
People build
speaker
stuff,
on it.
but they build stuff like this.
That's printed though,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Hold on,
3D
Steve.
printed.
Steve, put it back up
Yeah.
there. We lost it.
Looks like a something from the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah,
Nah,
it's
it
a
doesn't- it looks like
lobster-
something
it's
from-
a lobster key.
Something from
Sideline.
Star Trek. Stan, what were you showing?
That was a QCX kit from QRP Labs. I
Yeah.
haven't built yet.
Oh yeah.
Radio Shack carried so many things, and here's one I don't have. I think I have it somewhere. A business financial calculator. We carried a ship pot full of calculators, and then I bought a 62 series book, Computing with the Scientific Calculator, with all kinds of formulas and how to do stuff inside.
Hey
So,
Dana, when I was at the Shalloway store today, they still have big old They have this gargantuan size calculator. It's huge. It's like larger than my head. It's like a it's supposed to be like a little portable printing calculator, like one of these, or if it can show up,
oh yeah,
like one of these. But it was huge.
Yeah, Monroe. We had those in high school in our math class. We had Monroe calculators, and they were really cool because they had a square root key on them. But they were big, and they had Nixie tube displays on them.
Ooh, that's cool.
Yeah, the calculators came in. They were Radio Shack had a lot of calculators, didn't they, Dana? That was a big
We
thing.
sure did.
Yeah. So those are early integrated circuits, right?
I got into reverse Polish notation very early on, so I became an HP guy.
HP.
So yeah, so I have a bunch of old HP calculators here, and there's a really nice HP calculator that you can run on your cell phone that's called Free 42.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
342?
Free FREE.
Oh, free 42.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and it emulates the HP 42. So
Nice.
it's very nice. Yeah.
I gotta
So
check that
if
out.
you're an RPN guy, you know, none of these dumb algebraic calculators will do.
Was that the reverse Polish logic?
Yeah, reverse Polish notation.
Notation.
Yep, reverse Polish notation. So if you added two numbers, you said 2, enter 3 plus.
You know, my mom every year, we had calculators. One was on sale every month. My mom always said, get me a calculator. So every year for Christmas, I'd get her that, among other things. And then later on, when my mom died 5.5 years ago, I thought, here's all these calculators. She just loved having them around. She never really used them, or, oh, the batteries are dead. Now they have the solar powered ones. So
Yeah. Now,
good stuff on that.
And let's not talk about slide rules. But now, how many of you guys still have your slide rules?
I still have my
I can't
E6B
find one
flight
of those.
calculator in this manual.
I still have my post slide rule. As a
I don't
freshman in
think
college, freshman in college,
Post
engineering college, as freshmen, we had to learn how to use slide rules. That
And
was
Brad,
in
Brad,
1972.
this is before you were born, Brad. So
I don't think I've ever seen a side
Parents weren't
roll in person. I think I've only seen them on TV.
Well, I have a couple of several of them buried around here somewhere. No, I never got
Steve,
rid of them.
hold on,
Some
Steve.
of
That's
them are
not
real.
a slide rule.
Some of them
Alan?
are real good. They made out of bamboo. I think and they got the
Yeah.
bamboo with laminated on them.
You're not old
Yeah.
school until you're doing
I think
your
it was Pickett.
calculations.
What
on
an
this.
abacus.
This is my
Wasn't it
calculator.
Pickett that made them? The Pickett
Yeah,
made
those-
slide rules. A lot of them, I think.
Hey, Rick, do you still have a slide rule?
Yep, I got a big Picket one downstairs. I don't know how to use it, but I still have
Pickett,
it.
yeah.
Get with
Yeah.
Bob. Bob said he'll train you on that.
Show up
Yeah,
for
I
your,
used to use mine all the time.
show
Or
up for your,
Alan will.
show up
Yeah,
for your extra
we had
class
pickets
test.
that were metal that were painted yellow. Were pickets.
Yeah,
The
aluminum.
I had
answer
a
is
post which was
42.
painted blue with a white laminate.
Did you bring that to your ham test, Steve?
Yes. They said, take that. You can't use that. So watch me. Do you know
Hey,
how to use that? I keep forgetting how to do multiplication on it.
If you you look at the old NASA movies, Mission Control, and they're sending landing a guy on the moon, they were doing a lot of calculations with slide rules then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They had a thing on their belt where they carried around everywhere, just like a calculator and then a cell phone.
And also don't forget the pocket protector too, Tom.
Yeah. What did I lived in Dallas for 5 years, Dana, and that was big. It was a big Radio Shack, right? Tandy was there. What was the deal down there?
The corporate headquarters was Fort Worth and the
Fort
Tandy
Worth.
Towers. There was one tower, and then they built a second one because they were expanding so much. And then the pinheads decided to sell it because it didn't meet our needs. And then they built a new tower, and 5 years later they were bankrupt.
Oh, really?
So, yeah.
So that was right at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Because I bought a lot of stuff down there at the Radio Shack, and I just felt like it was a inline. It was like the headquarters town, but it actually wasn't. It
Well,
was
as a President's Council member, I actually I had a lifetime 20% discount, except Radio Shack out of business. The corporate stores and the dealer franchises don't honor that. So,
like 20% discount.
And Bob, I remember if you were a stockholder, you got during Christmas, November, December, you got a letter from Radio Shack as a stockholder that you would get 10%, I think it was, off any purchase, even a computer, something like that.
Yep, I only have 2 shares.
Didn't matter if you had 1 share or 1,000 or more. You got a letter, but you could only use it once. So That's
Yep.
why, and that's why a lot of people own stock in Tandy.
I was part of Tandy,
Wow.
and I do autographs.
Good
If
evening.
interested.
The time is 9 p.m.
Hey guys,
Oh,
it's our 1 hour limit.
Yep, yeah, I got to go to the RVRN net now. The
All right.
RV radio network guys have a Jitsi net that they start at 9 o'clock here.
Well, I will
Oh,
let you
what
know.
frequency is that on?
I wrote Dave Wolf several times during the broadcast. Haven't heard back from him, but we'll see if we can get him again because I think I would love to hear the inside stories of him working down there and the parts and pieces and all the
Yeah.
memories you guys brought together, all the products you showed. I mean, I just got this El Cheapo soldering iron, and meanwhile, Dave's got this really cool one, and somebody else had one. I forget who it was that they had one, but lots of good memories, a lot of good products, a good company, but unfortunately, times change. So,
Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, thank you all for watching DMR Tech Net TV. We'll do this again next month, if not sooner.
All right. Thank
All
you
right.
for hosting this,
Thank you.
Dana. Thank you.